Hello, everybody, and good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom. I am your faithful host, Moshe, and welcome to another episode of whatever the hell this is. I'm definitely going to change that title, don't worry. But I wanted to make a video because I haven't done one in a while. And at first I was going to make a bunch of videos because I had so many different ideas. But then I'm like, you know what, why don't I just do one big one and try to fit it all in and see. Maybe I'll do future videos where I go more in depth about some of the topics discussed in this one. We'll see. But without wasting any more of your time or mine, let's get into it, shall we? So, to start off, I want to talk about this book I'm reading. It's called Proof of God Project. Personally, not the best title, but whatever. Answering the question of God's existence through physical evidence. Ooh. Okay. So then we go to the back. It says, no philosophy. No theology. Ooh. No faith required. Ooh, I'm interested. For centuries, humanity has searched for God through sermons, scripture, and speculation. True. But what if the evidence was already here? Ooh, do tell. By the way, I'm not mocking it and making fun of it. I'm just being... I don't want you to think I'm trying to make fun of it or I'm mocking it. I'm just being silly. But photographed, measured, and tested? Intriguing. Proof of God Project is the first comprehensive investigation that answers the question of God's existence using only physical, scientific, and peer-reviewed evidence. What? No arguments from design. Ironically, thank God. No ancient texts. Good. No appeals to emotion. Fair. Just the data, medical, neurological, and forensic, examined with the same rigor used in any scientific field. Okay. The evidence is undeniable. The result is undeniable. The answer is undeniable. I think that's the most, least remarkable part of that. You didn't need to tell us. We could have just read the book and decided that for ourselves, but okay. Anyway, it is a very, very good book. I'm getting so much out of it. And it's different than these other proof of God kind of books, just as it laid out. Because all of those other books, they want to lay out these arguments or these philosophical debates and where you have to understand certain philosophic principles. And, it's or they make you wade through page after page of just raw data and just all right, I mean, I get to the point. Or it's just, or there's not even an argument, it's just a story of some guy and how he found God, which again, I'm not putting that down, I'm just saying, how does that really help us, or people that want evidence, So anyway, I was very intrigued by this, because all the other books about God, about proving God, that's all they do. And most of them use all the same tired, often non-tenable or nonsensical arguments that we're all used to, that we've all heard a bajillion times. For example, one of the most common ones, I can't believe that this still comes up today, again and again and again. It just won't die. It's the design argument. I hate the design argument because it won't go away no matter how wrong we show it is. Or as we as human beings discover that it is. It's interesting to discover something about something that we made up. That's not really much of a discovery, but okay. But I don't want to get into I don't want to turn this whole video about evolution and all that, because I really want to talk about the book more broadly. But I do want to just cover that one argument, just because it really sticks in my craw. The argument goes like this. If we look at the vast complexity of the world, the physical and biological world, clearly, all of this complexity could not have just come about through chance or just randomly, unguided. And, for example, the classic example is if you found a watch sitting in the middle of a field, and you saw like all of its springs and all of the little parts and how it's designed and put together, nobody would think, oh, I think that nature just spontaneously just created this watch just like this magically out of nowhere for no reason. They go, obviously you wouldn't assume that. You would assume, even if you'd never seen a watch before in your life, like you were like some, like, you know, person living in some village in, you know, sub-Saharan Africa in the 1700s, you know, who had never seen any technology, that person would assume this was made somehow, because it's made of different pieces. Clearly this was designed and put together by an intelligence, by a mind, by a rational brain, some sort of individual must have created this. This is the problem with that argument. The problem with that argument is that it denies the very mechanics of how evolution works in the first place. The way evolution works is it's a process called natural selection. And what that means is that there are random mutations that just happen for no particular reason. They just happen in living organisms, and if they happen to somehow give that organism some kind of an advantage to get more food, to be a little faster from escaping from predators, or if it gives them some sort of advantage against predators, maybe some sort of weapon to use against them to defend itself, that creature is going to have a much higher chance of reproducing, because it's going to be out of the range of the threats and everything, right? And so if there's a mutation that happens that gives the creature an advantage, it will then go from that and keep going, and it'll reproduce, and over time, in living organisms that like are already around, like let's say that this mutation thing, let's say it happens in Australia, right? Let's just say for the sake of argument, let's just say all the continents the way they are. Let's say tectonic plates never happened. They did, but that's to make this whole thing simpler. Just bypass all that. Let's just pretend for the sake of argument, the way the Earth is shaped is the way it's always been shaped, and all the continents were exactly the way they are today, okay? They weren't, but again, we're going for simplicity and, you know, and briefness, if you will. Trying to be concise here, and not get too far afield. So if that happens and there's a mutation in Australia, and that organism then has some sort of an advantage, and from that mutation it'll have a higher chance of reproducing and then passing on that mutation to another, its offspring, and if it's an advantage, then it'll be an advantage for them as well, and over time, it'll become a feature of that creature. That rhyme was not intentional. But let's say it's in a place, like we just said, Australia, which is cut off from other living organisms, which limits its gene pool, right? So that's why you have different species. That's how different species come about. I'm sure it's much more detailed and complicated than that. I actually have a really good friend. I would say probably my best friend. I mean, I have two people in my life who I would say are my best friends. And I really don't want to pick either one and say one is and one isn't. They're both equally my best friend. One's a lady and one's a man. So one is my best guy friend and one is my best lady friend. I guess you could put it that way if you want to be fair. And then somebody in the comments be like, you don't have a they, them friend? What do you hate non-binary people? Yeah, I hate non-binary people. Right. Yeah, I hate them. I'm such a bigot against them. That's why I've spent years arguing and putting up posts and having discussions and doing research and arguing with people and debating back and forth on behalf of the trans community and all of the different segments of it, which includes non-binary people. But I hate them and I'm a bigot. Okay, that makes fucking sense. Anyway, back to the crux of what we were saying. So my good friend, my good guy friend, he actually went to school for this, and he, shout out Elijah, it's my homie Elijah, and I won't say his last name, because he might not want his name out there like that, so, I hope he watches this video, just so you can see I gave him a shout out. Anyway, So the geographical location limits the gene pool of a genetic, a gene pool of an organism, and because they don't, they're cut off from other organisms. That's why you have different species in different areas around the world, and so between that. And then the first thing we were talking about, natural selection, I'm sure that I butchered that because I'm not a scientist, I'm not a researcher, but I have read a lot and I've seen a lot of documentaries, I've talked a lot about it to people, and from what I understand, I think that that's the general gist of it, of how that works. And now, here's why that's an argument against design, because the design argument assumes that it assumes that, how can I really, put this really well? The design argument ignores the fact of cumulative effect. That's a good way to put it. What that means is, over time, the different mutations, like we just said, if they're advantageous to the species, to an organism, they'll stay, right? And then they'll branch out and verify, and that's why you get all these different subspecies and all these different categories of creatures and living organisms. Because over time, the advantages that they have are cumulative. So, picture, let's call this the organism, for the sake of this argument, okay? Let's call this the base example, the genesis, if you will, of this organism. And it's floating along, doing its thing, okay? And it gets a mutation. and let's say it's born, right? Okay, it's born and has this mutation. Okay, so this mutation makes it move faster, whatever, you know. Now, what people with the design argument fail to understand is that that mutation, if it's a good mutation and it leads to the organism being able to reproduce more and therefore natural selection favoring it, there's going to be a cumulative effect over time. So if it has one mutation that's good and then one of its descendants gets, let's say, a second mutation, which also has some sort of an advantage for the organism, those things are going to stay and they're going to continue and they're going to, over time, they're going to accumulate until it turns into all the diversity that we see of life. And what people with the design argument don't understand, they don't understand that, or they don't seem to get that it's a cumulative effect. That no, it doesn't just come out of nowhere all at once. Of course not. That's absurd. Which is really funny that they have that argument, because that's basically what they're saying. If you think about it, they're basically saying that, well, God did it. It just came out of nowhere and God did it. So they say, oh, it's so absurd to believe that this complex, amazing thing just happened and that God or some intelligence wasn't behind it. But then, at the same time, they want us to believe that some sort of intelligence just popped this thing into existence. So, you're saying that the idea of things just popping into existence is not an unreasonable thing. Because clearly, from their line of reasoning, if God did it, then that makes perfect sense. But if it happened naturally, that's not possible. It's like they're literally undercutting their own argument with the same argument. They're saying it's irrational to believe that something so diverse and complex has come into existence out of nowhere. Like, just pop into existence. Okay, so it must have been created. Okay, how? Well, by God, he just made it. He just popped it into existence, I guess. Huh. You see why that sounds stupid? Do you hear yourself? But evolution does not say that. It just popped out of nowhere. It said what evolution actually does say, and what we know through science, through so much evidence and research and mountains of data, is that that there's a cumulative effect over time, and that's how it works. That's why I hate the argument from design, because it doesn't work. It fails to grasp a very important part of how evolution works, and then it comes up with an argument based on that. I think that's an example of a straw man argument, if I'm using that term correctly. A straw man argument is where you take something, some idea that's not the actual idea itself, but really just a bizarre caricature of the idea, and then you attack that caricature, and then tell people, see, the idea is stupid. Like, for example, somebody going and saying, like Jews, okay, like an anti-Semitic person would say, like, oh, Jews they control the whole world, and they're all so greedy, and they have all the money and all the stuff, and they have all the power, right? And someone then writes a book attacking them for having all the power, for having all the money, for running the world, for controlling everything. Somebody writes a book, And they address each of those points and why they're wrong and why they're bad. Chapter 1 talks about Jewish money. Why do the Jews have all the money? And why is that a bad thing? And what can we do about it? Chapter 2, why do Jews have all the power? Why is that a bad thing? And what can we do about it? It would be like that, right? But then, when you find out that Jews actually don't control the world and that they don't have all of the world's money and all that's just a bunch of nonsense, everything else in the book pretty much just falls flat, like domino effect, like boom, 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 boom. And that's what a straw man is. It's when you attack something based on usually a very negative and flawed perception of the thing you're attacking. Attack it according to that, and then go, see, that proves the thing is wrong. Well, no, it doesn't, because that's just a caricature of the thing that's been invented, but in reality, that's actually not how it is. So you're actually attacking nothing, essentially. You're chasing wind. You're fighting phantoms. You're going to war with shadows, essentially. This is getting really far, really up there. But okay. But that's why I don't like the argument from design. And the argument from design often is a straw man argument. Because it says, well, how can evolution do this when this and this and this? It's like, oh, I know a perfect example of a straw man argument that would be great for this whole discussion. I should start out with this. I wish I would have thought of this in the first place. What better place to start than with the whole monkey thing? If people came from monkeys, how come there are still monkeys? That's a straw man argument. That's a perfect example of a straw man argument. Because evolution does not say that human beings alive today, modern human beings, came from modern living apes, chimps, orangutans, etc. Modern humans did not come from modern chimpanzees, and evolution never said they did. That's not what the theory says. The theory of evolution says that human beings are one of numerous ape species who share common ancestry. And you may not like that, especially if you're a very religious, traditional, conservative-minded person, but them's the facts. We have blood like apes. Our bodies are shaped like apes. We have all the same movements. Not one single part of our anatomy is any different, physically speaking, from apes. Everything that any other ape has, we have. For example, we may not be covered in hair like they are, but we do have body hair, some more than others, And so that's the thing. If humans came from apes, then why are there still apes? Because it doesn't say that modern humans and modern humans came from modern apes. They're all modern. Chimps, human beings, orangutans, gorillas, these are all contemporary modern ape species with extinct common ancestors. And that's where we came from. Oh, and if you don't like the idea, how are humans apes? Like I was just saying, we have the same blood, our anatomy is the same. We literally have 98% genetic similarity to chimpanzees. 98% genetic homogeny. I think that's the word. Maybe, not sure. But our DNA is 98% the same as theirs. So we are apes. We are apes. We're a type of ape. Okay, fine. Does that mean we're animals? I mean, in a very broad way, yeah, kind of. But we can distinguish between us and, you know, non-human animals. So, well, I turned this whole thing into a thing about evolution. I wasn't even planning on doing that. Well, there you go. Y'all got a little little video, little lesson on evolution for you. You know what? I'm tempted to make this video into multiple. Okay. I think I'll try that. I'll try breaking the videos down into more smaller bites, I think, with different parts. Because I think that also might be why people don't watch my videos, is they're intimidated by, it's 40 minutes, I don't know, 40 minutes. So, alright. Anyway, well then that's the end of part 1. I'll see you guys again in a few minutes in part 2. Bye.